Welcome everyone. Today I'm with Jonathan Watson at Lumon, and he's our expert, and he's going to be talking to us about exchanging your currency. That could be for buying a house, it could be for anything, I suppose. What else would you exchange money for, Jonathan?
So it could be any type of international investment, and thank you for organising this, Peter. Yes, any type of international investment, of course, for property, potentially an inheritance. There could also be international investments that clients have in savings, shares, all over the world, the global world we live in. So yes, any amounts of money that need to be moved for those potentially larger purposes, but also smaller amounts for living costs and topping up bank accounts and those types of transfers too.
As you say, we're in the modern world. I'm here in France, and you're obviously back in the sunny UK in London. So welcome, Jonathan. Thanks for joining us today. Obviously, we're here to talk about money exchange. One of the first things that often people ask me is, what's the benefit between a sort of money exchange company like Lumon and actually going to your high street bank?
Of course. So the main benefit, and you can read a lot about this online, normally as soon as you start making an inquiry for a property and it talks about budgets, of course, that's going to determine what you actually pay for the property. And it does talk about the benefit over the banks of a currency broker. So what that means is you can get a better rate of exchange. We can demonstrate savings over the banks. Typical savings around 1 to 2 cents. We do like a mystery shopper every so often, trying to see what the banks are offering versus our rates. And those are the typical kind of savings that we can offer. So on a very sort of basic level, that's one of the main benefits. But then there's a lot more to it financially. So we can help very much with a more personal service versus the bank. You might find if you're talking to the bank, the person you're dealing with may not be too familiar with foreign exchange and what goes on in the world of foreign exchange. And they also may not be too familiar with the actual property transaction in France process. So certainly our traders here, myself, I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've helped literally thousands of people buy and selling property in France and all over the world. So we understand that transaction in sort of minute detail, and we can really ensure that our service really matches the transaction journey, if you like, for a French property. So obviously the signing of the compromis de vente, the active on later, and just ensure that those payments get made on time and at a rate that you're going to be happy with. So yes, very much a personal service to guide you through what's going on in the market. We've also got a number of benefits we can offer in terms of contract options, and we'll certainly talk more about those, I think, later on in this call. But essentially, with the bank, you're forced to accept whatever the rate is they're offering on the actual day when you make that payment. Now, if we're talking about from compromis de vente, which is the French equivalent, if you like, of an exchange, we call it in the UK the exchange, and the completion is the acte de vente in France. So the duration between those times, in the UK, it's sometimes a week. In France, it's about 2-3 months. Sometimes the exchange happens quite early in the process with that compromis de vente. Now, if you're doing it with the bank, let's say you've got to buy the currency really on the day when those payments are due. Not too much trouble always for the compromis de vente, because the money has to be there within 10 days of that being signed. But for the acte de vente, that means you've got to wait 3 months potentially before you can lock in your currency. Now, when you consider currency rates are moving every second, over the period of a few months, you can talk about many cents movement. That could mean you're forced to buy your currency on a bad day once you're getting to the completion. So we actually have a number of different options we can offer to lock in a rate at an earlier stage in the process. And that's really just going to help with your budgeting. It's going to mean you know exactly what you're paying for the property early on in the process, and you're not going to potentially have hundreds of thousands of euros that you've got to buy, that you've got to wait 3 months before you can purchase, with anything likely to happen to the rate. So main thing is the actual exchange rate that we can offer. Obviously, you want to get the best rate you can, make sure the property is as cheap as possible. But actually, we've got a number of benefits in terms of the service that we offer, just to ensure that transaction goes through really, really smoothly.
So you obviously sort of hinted about that. Obviously, the getting the best exchange rate is key for any client. But obviously, you can obviously offer different types of contracts. So could you just give us a quick overview of those sort of different types of contracts that you offer? You've sort of half mentioned them, but just
Absolutely. So your typical transaction is called a spot deal. So the deal is done on the spot at the rates of today, and the money is due within 2 working days. So just to explain a bit more about the process, very first step for a client is to register with us to activate a trading facility. It's totally free of charge to do that. Takes a minute or so online or over the phone with one of our team. And then you've literally got an active trading facility and you're all set up and ready to buy currency at the end of the phone with us.
say I'll put a link at the on the bottom of this video as well, so they can link direct to you guys if anyone's interested. Sorry, carry on, Jonathan.
No, and thank you for sharing that, Peter. And yeah, I think hopefully goes without saying, but yes, if anyone would like to talk more through this process and anything covered in this video, absolutely do reach out to Peter or myself personally. I'll be extremely happy to talk through in more detail and answer any particular questions. But yes, just that process. You register free of charge. Within minutes, you're set up. You're ready to buy currency at the end of the phone. We can do it online as well. We'll normally do the first couple of trades on the phone just to talk through the process with the client, make sure they're happy with everything. But yes, that spot trade is one of the most common we do. So we quote the rate and that's the final price to you. There's no other cost, fees or charges on top of that. No hidden banking fees, which you can sometimes get with the banks. Our fee, if you like, our profit as a business comes from our margin. It's the difference between our buying and our selling rate, but the level we quote you as a final price, and you get 100% of what we purchase for you. So it's very transparent. So we'll give you that quote. You might say, right, Jonathan, I need 10,000 euros for my deposit over in France. What's that going to cost me in pounds? So I'll give you the quote, tell you exactly how much that will cost in sterling. And then if you're happy, we lock that in. So what that means is we are physically buying those euros. They go into what we call a euro wallet. It's like a euro bank account, a client account, much like a solicitor, a notaire, other sort of professionals like accountants, etc. They hold money on behalf of clients. Very similar rules with us. So yes, we buy the euros, we'll buy 10,000 euros. It's then in this wallet. You then do a bank transfer to us, the exact amount of pounds that I've told you you owe, that gets paid. And then the euros are yours in your special euro wallet. And that's that. That's the trade done. So that's a spot deal. The money is due, as I say, within 2 days of agreeing the trade. And then the euros are available as soon as you've paid and they get sent out. The next type of contract in terms of popularity is called a forward contract. Now, this is a really clever contract. It's the foreign exchange version of like a buy now, pay later deal. You might get for, say, a sofa or a TV. You know, you see the adverts, don't you? Pay nothing for 24 months or something like that. So you do pay something with us. There is a small deposit. So it's not a charge or a cost, it's a deposit. I'll give you an example. Let's just say you've agreed this property, it's 10,000 euros that you're going to owe for the deposit. Typically, it's going to be a 10% deposit on the property. So that means the total property it's going to be about 100,000 euros once you include fees, etc. So let's just say you want to buy 100,000 euros worth. So we could do that trade, buy you the 100,000 euros, but you'd only need to give us 10% of the value in sterling within that 2-day period. And then you would choose the date in the future by which to pay it off. So like we said earlier, that French property transaction process, typically around 3 months. So quite common clients would say, right, I've got my money invested, or I might have all my pounds tied up in my UK property sale, etc., etc. They may not have access to their money, but they still want that peace of mind and certainty of knowing what the currency is going to cost them. So in that scenario, you could buy a forward contract. As I say, you lock in on the full amount of money you're going to need. You pay about 5 to 10%. We can talk about the deposit percentage. It really depends on how much you're buying, how far forward, etc., etc. But yes, you pay 5-10% up front, and then you pay the rest of it, either the 90 or the 95% by the end of the contract, by that final 3 months. And once you've paid it off, the euros are then in the wallet and we can pay direct to the notaire.
I was going to say, I suppose that's really key for people, certainly people buying houses, you said, not so much if they've got the money tied up in another property, but actually that certainty, isn't it, of saying, right, okay, the exchange rate may be very good at the moment, or as you say, certainly over the last kind of few years, it has gone up and down. And I've certainly had quite a few clients that have sort of gone, well, we're just going to buy now. So we know we've locked it in. We know what we're going to pay. That's it. It's done. And then, 2 months down the line, okay, the exchange rate might be better, but it doesn't matter because they knew they'd locked in. But often, sometimes it can be worse. And they go, thank God I locked in, because I would have been cost me a lot more if I hadn't. So I think it's just giving that certainty, isn't it? I think it's really, really good way of doing it.
Absolutely. And that's what really all of this is about. It's understanding your costs in advance, particularly for these larger volumes for a property transaction. Like you mentioned there, 1 or 2 cents, it can be a difference of thousands of pounds and euros. And that could be potentially a very embarrassing phone call a client's got to make if you've had, and obviously this doesn't happen all the time, but you took look at the Liz Truss Crazy Kwartang episode a couple of years ago. The pound dropped about 6 cents in a matter of days, and we had some pretty stressed clients talking to us at that time. Brexit, okay, a more extreme example. The pound dropped 10 cents, in a matter of days. Now that, as I say, is quite extreme. But at those times, we did have some clients fixing their prices forward or buying their currency quite early on. And then when the market changed against them, they weren't suffering. They'd locked in. They knew what it was all going to cost them. And it's about removing the risk element from the market and just ensuring you're getting something that you're going to be happy with.
Definitely. And you said there was a third contract as well. What was that one, quickly?
Yeah, thank you. So you got a limit order and a stop loss order. A limit is where you choose a high rate that you'd like to buy at, higher than where the market is currently, and we will set an automatic order at that price. And then that's that. It's a very sort of advanced computer system we use to monitor the rate. As soon as it gets to that point, we'll automatically buy the currency. And that's a really good way to sort of try and get those highs if we think things are going to get better. The market's say changing every second. So if you've got one of these orders in and it suddenly goes there and you've missed it, actually this order will capture that. So it saves you missing out if the rates go up. And then a stop loss is the opposite of a limit order. It's to protect you if the market drops. So, as an example, you could set that at say 1.10, buying euros. And then if it dropped to 105, you're not going to get 105. You're actually going to get that 1.10 level. So it's putting in a lower level that you don't want to get worse than. And exactly like I said there, Peter, this is all about trying to manage your risk and understand your costs in advance.
Excellent. Okay. I mean, what's good to hear is the sort of the broad range of services and contracts that you can do. And I suppose, obviously, if someone's interested, then they can speak to you to actually really work out what suits their needs the best. Another question that often I get asked is, do people need to open a French bank account in order to exchange money, especially when they're buying a property? It's sort of one of the things that's in their minds. Do they need to?
Eventually, yes, but you don't need to buy. You don't have to have a French bank account open in order to buy your euros. So I mentioned this wallet here. So as soon as a client's registered, they've got immediate access to this euro wallet. So as I say, it's a euro bank account. It's a client account in euros that a new client has access to. So yeah, a client could register, and that same day they could potentially purchase euros. And then it is like a bank account of theirs. The euros just sit in that account ready for future payment. So the short answer is no, they don't need to open one. Eventually, you will need to open a French bank account for your insurance and other payments, utilities, that type of thing. You'll normally need to have a euro account opened. But actually, the French banks, they don't make it too easy to open an account, as you'll probably be aware there, Peter. I mean, the very minimum is you need to have signed off on a compromis de vente. Sometimes you need to have actually completed on the property and actually have an address there and be living in France fully. So in those earlier stages, it's much better to use this wallet, and we can actually pay direct to the notaire for the payments that are needed.
Yeah, that was the other question I was going to ask you. Is obviously if someone transfers the money and they have this money sort of sitting in this euro wallet, obviously then you can then pay the notaire for the final act or whatever through this wallet. So in the sense, they don't need the bank account at that moment, but obviously to if you've got a house in France, you want to have a French bank account eventually anyway. But just for the sale part, it can work quite well, I suppose.
Yeah, this is a huge advantage. So if you think, even if you have got this French bank account open, let's just say for argument's sake, the example we had before, you've got this 100,000 euros in your French bank. You've then got to get that to the notaire. And the French bank's a bit like the British banks, for a large amount of money, you've sometimes got to go into the branch. You've got to book an appointment. They might ask for all sorts of extra forms and paperwork. It's not always going to be easy. So we do sometimes have clients who, they're sort of traveling over in France, with the caravan on the back, the dog in the back, their worldly possessions, and then they have to make some horrible detour and, change of plan to actually go into a French bank in sometimes the middle of nowhere. They're not always open every day. It's a bit like an appointment that you'll generally have to make. So yeah, you can cut all of that potential stress and hassle out.
Don't put people off moving to France, Jonathan. It's the relaxed life of French why people move here. So
Well, absolutely. And I totally get that. But yes,
I know what you're saying. The advantage of yourselves is you can do it on the phone, you can do it online, and things like that. If someone is obviously planning on having a holiday home or moving to France, how's the best way to sort of manage their ongoing living costs in France? I suppose with bringing money over and things like that.
absolutely. So we've got a number of different options. We have a regular payment plan. So you can set up a standing order with your bank in the UK and you can almost forget about it. You might do that, say, on the first of each month, you send through £500 or £1,000, whatever it is, and we will automatically send that through to your French bank. The euros are there. If not same day, then within 24 hours, they're cleared in your French account. And that's just that set up. As I say, you don't have to worry about it. Other clients might want to take a bit more of a sort of speculative, strategic approach, and maybe let your money build up in the UK from a pension or whatever it might be, and then we can keep you updated on what the market's doing, and then you can just move it over in lump sums. We have an online trading option as well, so we can set you up on that, and then you can just auto manage it yourself. But certainly here at Lumon, we have a real focus on that, as I say, personal service, and there'll always be someone to pick up the phone and give you an update on the market and do the trades for you.
Excellent. So, I mean, how? It sounds a silly question, but I mean, I have never heard of Lumon until a couple of years ago. How safe is my money with you guys, and why should we trust you to transfer our money? I suppose.
No, very good question, particularly in this day and age. So, I mean, Lumen, the name, it is quite new, but we're an amalgamation of a few different companies. The core company was founded in the year 2000. So 25 years almost of trading. I've actually been here, say, 14 and a half years looking after clients. So very well established out there in the market. Last year, we traded about 7 billion pounds worth of currency, and we dealt with about 750 different notaires in France. We've got a real footprint over there. In terms of the actual legal sort of safeguards that are in place, we're regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority as what we call an e-money institution, electronic money institution. So it's one of the highest levels of regulation in our sector for firms operating, and it's all to do with how we call it safeguarding, how we look after your money essentially. So I mentioned before with the wallet, you have this client account. With a client account, it's specially for client funds. So we operate these client accounts in all the different currencies that we trade. So any money that you send to us, if it was pounds, it would go into the sterling client account. If we've bought euros, it's going to be in the euro client account. Now, as part of the e-money institution guidelines and regulation, any money in those accounts is safeguarded. What that means is, were something to happen to our business, no one else can actually lay claim on your money. So your money always remains separate from our actual business monies, and it's not sort of at risk, if you like, with any other potential liabilities from the business. So essentially, if anything untoward was to happen to the business, your money is kept separate and it would be returned to you. So yes, there's that framework there.
I suppose that's quite important. We've certainly seen banks that have crashed and people have lost money and things like that. So it's quite quite comforting to know that that money is safeguarded in a sort of separate account. I mean, I know you talked about pound sterling as well. You know, a lot of my viewers and a lot of people I speak to as well are actually kind of from America or from other parts of the world. Obviously, I'm guessing you can exchange money from pounds to dollars to whatever. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. We can service American clients. The US dollar is trading very strongly against the euro, some of the better points since November. So yes, we deal with American clients. We deal with Australian, New Zealand, other, the Scandi currencies as well, the Norwegian krona, Danish krona, Swedish krona. So yeah, clients all over the world, and it's a very similar it's exactly the same process. You register with us, and then we give you a client account to pay your money into whatever your local based currency is. And then we'll talk through strategy with you. So you may want to lock in a rate quite early on, understand your costs. Others might be a bit more speculative and they say, well, look, Jonathan, I understand the rates could go down, but I really want to hold out and see if things are going to get better. So then we can maybe use a limit order to try and capture it if it goes up. But it's a very personal, proactive service, keep you informed of what's going on in the market, and then just allow you to make more informed decisions.
Obviously, you're talking about kind of talking to customers and discussing kind of what the best contract for them is. But how do you guys kind of, I mean, do you guys know when the best time to exchange currency? I mean, are you, obviously you're the experts, but I mean, a little bit of, just explain a little bit how you kind of go about making sure that we as the clients get the best deal.
Sure, sure. I mean, so it just must be said that no one on this planet knows exactly what the rate's going to do. And that's because the currency markets are just a reaction to what is happening in the world. And, the FX markets are known for being some of the most volatile and widely traded markets there are. Having said that, you're absolutely right. We can apply a bit of intelligence to looking at all of this, and we look at a lot of the market data that's coming out. I'm personally very interested in the currency markets and what's driving exchange rates, so interest rates, economic data that's coming out, also political news. Of course, we've got two big elections in 2024, the US and the UK election coming up, so that could be market moving events. So we'll give the client a real summary of what's happening. And as I say, we're very proactive. So we've had some good examples in the last week where comments from Bank of England members have seen the pound jump and also dip. So as soon as that's happening, we can get on the phone to our clients and say, by the way, your 100,000 euros is, £800 less than it was last week, or just give them some of that up-to-date information. We also go a little bit further, and rather than just relying on being proactive, we actually look at the forecast data from some of the leading banks out there. We look at about 50 different financial institutions, all the big household global names really in banking. And we look at all of their forecasts. This is really high level research from these banks. You won't get this on a Google search or in the back of a newspaper. And what we do, we can share that sort of raw data with you, but we'll give you a summary. So for example, out of 50 banks, there's a small majority who actually think pound euro levels are going to dip. Now, there's a high-low forecast of about 9 cents over the next 3 months forecast by these banks. So what we can do is really paint a more intelligent picture with a client if we're asked and say, look, no one knows exactly what's going to happen, but out of these leading financial institutions, X amount think it's going to go to this point. There's an average rate forecast here. And then we can try and put some plans in place, as I say, to have a bit more intelligence, a bit more strategy to everything, and essentially just try and make sure you're not missing out. But yeah, it really does come down to that personal service, keeping people up to date, making sure they know their options, and just really seeing what's going to suit them best.
Yeah, excellent. Well, it certainly sounds like you know what you're talking about. Yeah, which is a good thing.
There's a brilliant quote that I always like. It say the best way to predict the future is to create it, and that's certainly what you can do with some of our contract options.
Excellent. Oh God, look at that. There we are. Smooth. No, that was brilliant. It was really interesting to kind of, I suppose, hear some of the different kind of contracts that you can offer people. Often you just think about exchanging money. You think it's just a case of ringing someone up. What's the best rate? And that's it. You go for it. When actually there's a lot more that you can do to make sure that it works for you depending on your situation, but two, that you can kind of get the best exchange rate as well, which is obviously what all of us want to do. But so thank you very much, Jonathan, for joining me today and giving us a bit more of an insight. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'll put a link at the bottom. So if you want to click the link, that will take you off to Lumon, and you can register your details. And I'm sure either Jonathan or one of his teams will get in touch. But yeah, thank you very much for your time today, and I'll speak to you soon.
That's brilliant, Peter. Thanks very much for having us on.
Brilliant. Cheers, Jonathan. Bye-bye. Don't go. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. We're going to be doing some more Interview the Experts, and hopefully we're going to get some more people to give us some more advice around moving abroad and specifically moving to France. Well, that's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers, guys. Bye.